Ashley Haynes Gaspar, COO, Industry and Business Applications, US, Microsoft. Kyle Lee, founder, Alaskan Salmon Company, and moderator Kristen Stoller, deputy editor, founders, Forbes.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hey, Detroit.
Woo! So I want to start off with a fact that I found really interesting that I think pertains to our conversation. So in 2011, only 20% of S&P 500 companies reported their ESG scores, and today 92% do. Yet there are still so many consumers, somewhere upwards of 70%, who don't believe that brands will actually deliver on these promises and their goals, especially regarding sustainability. So I want to start by asking our panelists today, why do you think there is so much distrust regarding the sustainability space and what businesses are doing? And Ashley, let's start with you.
Thanks, Kristen. I think if we go back just a decade or two, it was really all about corporate earnings, and it was about shareholder capitalism at its core. And I think return to the shareholder was one of the key decision factors that drove almost every decision in terms of how companies showed up. And I think we've really shifted to a time of stakeholder capitalism, where it's not just the shareholder that matters, because I think the shareholder matters, but it's also customers that matter, it's employees that matter, and it's the communities that we operate in that also matter. And I think the skepticism is there because of where we've been. And what I'm super excited about is where we're headed. And I know personally at Microsoft, we're investing in people and programs and products and in partners that are really helping us live our sustainability commitments and help our customers live their sustainability commitments as well.
Awesome. And I want to come back to those specific ones, but Kyle, do you want to answer as well?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. She's right. Consumers have never been more educated. They have so much access to information, and they're putting in the time. They want to learn. They want to research the companies and the brands that they're, voting with their dollars with. And so when there's that disconnect from what a company says they're going to do versus what they actually do, red flags come up.
Yeah.
Right? So I think the best way companies can kind of build that trust is be authentic and show them what's under the hood.
Yeah.
Show them how they're operating. And us at Alaskan Salmon Company, we're obviously a lot smaller than Microsoft, but we leaned into social media, TikTok, and traditional media outlets, and we show them, hey, this is us out here fishing, and then these are the next steps we're going to do before it arrives in your kitchen.
Awesome. So going back to what you each said about what you're doing at your companies, can you give me the top 3 things that you're doing to create a more sustainable future at your companies? I know it's hard to pick 3, but Ashley, you want to go first and give it a
challenge
stab?
accepted. So Microsoft, we believe it starts with commitment. We have been carbon neutral since 2013, and we have big, meaty goals to be carbon negative, water positive, and zero waste by 2030. And we know that we are going to have to walk the talk, and we have the privilege and the benefit of being customer one. So as we are innovating and developing solutions that help ultimately our customers track their carbon footprint and be more efficient, we're trying it on ourselves first to help us reach those sustainability commitments.
Awesome. Kyle, what about you?
Yeah, and for us in the fisheries on the operational side, some of the initiatives that we're really focusing on is providing that live data to Alaska Fish and Game. Fisheries in Alaska are heavily regulated, and it's hard to get access to that information. And so by communicating with all of our fishermen to translate, hey, this is what we're catching, where we're catching, directly to the guys who are managing, they can make more efficient and faster decisions for the future of our fisheries.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile the packaging you use or the energy you use with your sustainability goals at each of your companies? Kyle, let's start with you.
Yeah, for sure. First for us within seafood, typically when people go out to grocery stores, they buy whole fish or whole fillets, and something that we do to kind of help reduce food waste is conveniently portioning them and vacuum packing, so a consumer can just take out a couple pieces or whatever they need for that night, and that way they're not contributing to as much food waste. And then also, the physical packaging part, I think, probably a couple founders here or a few companies here are doing it, but we actually stopped putting in those, pamphlets on the inside.
Yeah.
With recipes, it's awesome information. It's a lot of fun, but within our next outer boxes, we're going to implement QR codes.
Yeah.
So it's sort of digital, and it's small things like that. I think it'd make a big difference in the long run.
Yeah, and this is why I love being on a panel with you, Kyle, because I think you might say, my gosh, like Alaskan Salmon Company and Microsoft sitting on a panel together, what's the connective tissue? And we were talking about this backstage. I think the connective tissue is we all have a role to play, and it's going to take all of us. And I would tell you in the context of Microsoft, we're really focused on three things. The first is cloud. By taking on-prem data centers and moving them to the cloud, you can save up to 98% efficiency.
Wow.
That's big numbers when you think about everything that we're computing every day. The second thing that we're doing is we are focused on buildings. And we have a program that is targeted at making our buildings smart, making them more energy efficient. Through that process, we've saved 20%, and we're bringing those solutions to our customers. And then the third thing that we're doing is accountability, and it goes back to we all have a role to play. In 2020, we actually cascaded reporting requirements to people that are suppliers to Microsoft to share with us what their footprint looks like, because we know we can't do it by ourselves, and it takes a community to make the progress we need to see.
Interesting. And another thing I'm really interested in is, I think a lot of people want to do good for the environment, but they don't know how to reconcile it with their bottom line. How do you both drive profits while also meeting these ESG or sustainability goals that you have at your companies?
For me, I think if you're not in a sustainable business, your business is unsustainable. And that statement is backed by math. And what I would offer is, as we're thinking about companies, you've got to care about your top line, because that drives operating leverage. You got to think about your margins, and you got to think about your capital allocation. So if we focus on revenue for a second, you said it, Kyle, we've heard a lot of panelists talk about it today. Yep. Customers are making decisions based on companies that align with their value set. It's why I love Bombas socks. I mean, they're great $15 socks, but I love them because I love the mission. Like, they give a free pair to someone in need, and that aligns with my values. And I'm willing to pay more for that pair of socks as a result. And the data says 77% of customers are willing to make similar choices. So drives top line, margin. When you think about margin and operating profit, you've got to figure out how to find inefficiencies. Sustainability helps to identify inefficiencies and helps you run your business better. And then ultimately, capital allocation, when you think about things that help you run your business better, data helps drive insights that ultimately drives outcomes, which breeds great brands, because people want to be a part of great brands, both customers and employees.
Definitely. Yeah. And for us, our business model is very simple. So as we grow and scale, we really put an emphasis on our supply chain and logistics, and as we continue to grow, continue to check, hey, are we being efficient? These new partners that we're bringing on, what's their carbon footprint? What are some of the things that they're doing in their future plans? And does this align with us and our community? Yeah. And then also, I think it's something that we've done well, is building a community and having that direct communication with the people who are consuming and eating our seafood, and hearing their thoughts and how we can continue to improve and build a product for them.
And speaking of supply chain, Kyle, I wanted to ask you, how did the pandemic affect your business, especially your supply chain? Because clearly I'm sure it did.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when the pandemic happened, we were still creating the idea of our company of, hey, can we make seafood more accessible to everyone? And we're based in Alaska. We didn't have a ton of connections, so we were working with a couple Michelin restaurants and hospitality groups, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to work directly with you guys. What are your thoughts? Getting feedback on the quality and some of the packaging that we were doing. And then COVID happened. And then all of that shut down so fast. A lot of people here, everyone here felt it. And so it really caused us to take a step back. It's hey, what's our end goal? What's our purpose? And it was to provide access to information and access to better quality seafood. We created a website, and the rest is history.
Excellent. And Ashley, I want to know at Microsoft, how has, inflation and the effects of the pandemic affected you guys over there as well?
Yeah, so whether it's fish or it's, products that Microsoft makes, supply chain has been a thing, I think, for us and for everybody in the room over the past, 2 or 3 years. And what I would say is, I think we've seen like a decade's worth of technology convergence happen in 2 or 3 years because necessity is the mother of invention. Absolutely. And you have to grow your way forward. And, I think we saw some categories emerge during COVID. You hear a lot about the metaverse. I think the consumer metaverse is an area that's still emerging. I would tell you the industrial metaverse is absolutely here today. And quickly, if you're like, hey, what's the industrial metaverse? Like, what the heck does that really mean? It's the ability to take your supply chain. If you're making anything, if you're shipping anything, we can model it in a digital twin in the cloud and help you identify points of inefficiency, opportunities to have cost savings with less carbon footprint, less use of potable water. And those are solutions that are here today. So I would tell you that's one of the positive things I think coming out of COVID for us is the ability for ourselves and for others to create a more resilient supply chain that has a better sustainability footprint as a result.
Great answer. And before we move into some audience questions, I wanted to ask, Ashley actually said this really insightful thing to me last week. You said sustainability is not only about the environment, but it's also about financial sustainability and DEI commitments. What are each of you doing at your companies in terms of looking at different social issues and how you can move the needle forward there?
Yeah, thank you for the question. DE&I is deep, deep, deep in my spirit and in my soul. And I would tell you at Microsoft, we have several initiatives that we are using to make sure that we're not just building sustainable things with low carbon footprints, but we're sustaining the communities that we're building in as well. A lot of that looks like reskilling in communities to ensure that the financial disparity that exists, the education that exists in the systems doesn't continue to evolve, and that we're pulling people along on this journey with us. And all the data says that economically, sustainability is going to drive $4.3 trillion in market opportunity, and you need people to fill those roles. So what better opportunity to bring those two things together?
Absolutely. I wanted to also get an audience question in too. We have a really good one here. You mentioned going carbon negative. How do you both plan on going beyond carbon neutral? How do you get there?
I'm happy to take it.
Yeah.
Do you have a perspective?
Please.
Okay,
Yeah.
no problem. So there's a lot of things that we're doing. As I mentioned, we are cascading requirements to suppliers, so we're thinking about our total footprint. That's one thing that we're doing. We're upgrading all of our facilities. That's the second thing. And then the third thing that we think is really important in the sustainability journey is also in the system of legislation. And, there's a lot of press around the health of the grid, the efficiency of the grid. So the other thing, that I think is incredibly important in this journey is not just what we are doing, but the system in which we operate. And I think we have a responsibility to try to shape legislation that also helps us do that efficiently as well.
Definitely. Yeah, and for us, I touched on this earlier, but working directly with the guys who are managing Alaska's fisheries and helping them, become more efficient and then the next thing that we're focusing on is other carbon neutral events and programs that we can support, whatever capacity that we can. Obviously we're a lot smaller, but to continue to drive and provide support where we can.
Awesome. And Kyla, a question came in just for you actually. Does your company have any focus or awareness on issues with overfishing?
Yeah.
And how do you address that?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So, as we scale, we get a ton of questions all the time, just like this. How do you address overfishing? But because sustainability within Alaska it's so much deeper than just like a rule. It's very deeply rooted into our traditions. Many rural communities rely on these annual salmon and seafood runs as their only source of protein. Some of these areas don't have grocery stores that we take for granted every day. And so working with management, they have they're tracking the runs every single day, multiple times a day, saying like, hey, this is how much we're seeing. We're only going to allocate X amount to ensure that we have these future runs. And so this kind of, de-risks that opportunity of potential overfishing.
Interesting. Now, I want to ask you both a question that I'm sure a lot of people want to know. How can brands best market to consumers in their path toward a more sustainable future? And do you have any tips or tricks that you're using at each of your companies that you think might help? Ashley, let's start with you.
Okay, great. So I think it starts with commitment. And I think that business provides the best platform for sustainability. I mean, we are the movers and the shakers and the change leaders, and we have the opportunity to really shape not just our companies, but to shape communities and to shape culture. And I think brands at their core need to be about hope and about community. And when I think about this audience in the room, you are the leaders of today and the future of tomorrow, and there's a tremendous responsibility and a tremendous opportunity for us to go on this journey together. So if you were to say, what are the 3 things? I think it comes down to assess, accelerate, transform. You want to assess what your current footprint is today. There's lots of technologies that can help you understand that. You want to accelerate by figuring out where to drive simplification and reducing carbon footprint. Buildings and supply chain, super easy places to start. And then after you get past that and you look towards transforming, you can begin to understand what are your most energy or resource-rich practices within your business, and you can figure out how to innovate around them.
Yeah, and I think for companies who want to take that first step, just really think about what are your strengths? Because that's going to be the easiest and minimum first step that you can take. And then once you take that first step, moving towards your sustainability goals, you're going to learn what are some obstacles that you're running into, things, areas of improvement, and then from there you take that and learn and continue to build off that.
Yeah.
Excellent. And one last question for you guys. This is from our audience as well. When will brands and people choose sustainable practices even when it hurts the bottom line? And how can we move past only doing the win-win solutions?
So I would tell you Microsoft and Publicis did a study together. There were, I think, over 100 CEOs that were surveyed. And what was interesting was, similar to your statistic, 95% of them said this is a C-suite priority, if not top 3, certainly top 5. What I found interesting in the study, though, is these CEOs said they were willing to invest up to 5 to 10% of their operating profit to move forward. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier around, CEOs are being held accountable now in different ways. It's not just about shareholder capitalism, it's about stakeholder capitalism, and valuations and how companies are looked at are shifting. What would you say?
Yeah, I agree, and I think a lot of this is already being set in motion now, where they're putting the product and the people and the environment first, and then that just further solidifies and strengthens the community and the people who are using your product.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much.
Thanks,
This was
Kristen.
such a great
Yeah,
conversation.
thanks for having us.